The boardroom was silent, save for the faint hum of the air conditioning. Amara Johnson stood at the head of the table, her presentation slides glowing on the screen behind her. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, crafting a campaign that could redefine Blackwood Enterprises' image. Her heart pounded as she glanced around the room, meeting the eyes of her colleagues, all except one. Ethan Blackwood, the CEO, leaned back in his leather chair, his fingers steepled under his chin. His icy blue eyes scanned the slides with a look of thinly veiled disdain. Amara swallowed hard and began her pitch. "As you can see," she said, her voice steady despite the tension, "this campaign focuses on inclusivity and community engagement. It's not just about selling products, it's about building trust and—" "Trust," Ethan interrupted, his voice dripping with sarcasm. He straightened in his chair, his gaze locking onto hers. "Let me stop you right there, Amara. Do you really think our customers care about trust? They care about results. They care about innovation, not some feel-good nonsense." Amara's cheeks burned, but she held her ground. "With all due respect, Mr. Blackwood, studies show that consumers are more likely to support brands that align with their values. This campaign could set us apart from our competitors." Ethan smirked, leaning forward. "And what do you know about our competitors? Or our customers, for that matter? You've been here, 6 months? Maybe you should stick to what you know, like making coffee for the team." The room fell silent. A few colleagues exchanged uneasy glances, but no one dared to speak up. Amara clenched her fists under the table, her nails digging into her palms. She wanted to scream, to tell him exactly what she thought of his arrogance and ignorance. But she didn't. Instead, she took a deep breath and forced a smile. "Thank you for your feedback," she said, her voice calm but firm. "I'll take it into consideration." Ethan waved a hand dismissively. "See that you do. Next item on the agenda." As the meeting continued, Amara's mind raced. She had faced prejudice before, but never so blatantly, never so publicly. She thought about her father, Marcus, and the advice he had given her when she first started her career. "The world will try to knock you down, Amara, but you have to rise above it. Let your work speak for itself." She would. She had to. Later that evening, as she sat in her apartment, scrolling through her phone, a text from Marcus popped up. "Let him dig his own grave." Amara frowned. What did he mean? Before she could reply, another message came through. "The Gala is next week. Be ready." The Gala. Blackwood Enterprises' annual event, where the elite of the corporate world gathered to network and celebrate. Amara had planned to skip it, but now she wasn't so sure. Something in her father's words sparked a flicker of hope, a sense that justice might be closer than she thought. She didn't know it yet, but the Gala would change everything. Chapter 2. The Hidden File. Amara sat at her desk, the glow of her computer screen casting shadows across her face. The office was quiet, most of her colleagues having left for the day. She couldn't shake the memory of Ethan's cutting remarks from the morning meeting. His words had stung, but they had also ignited something in her, a determination to prove him wrong. She opened the company server, searching for any data that could strengthen her campaign proposal. As she scrolled through folders, her eyes caught on a file labeled Project Phoenix. It was buried deep in a restricted directory, accessible only to senior executives. Curiosity piqued, Amara hesitated for a moment before clicking on it. The file opened, revealing a series of documents and emails. Her eyes widened as she read through them. Project Phoenix wasn't just another corporate initiative, it was a cover for unethical practices. The documents detailed how Blackwood Enterprises had been funneling funds into offshore accounts, evading taxes, and exploiting loopholes to underpay contractors. Worse, there were references to bribes paid to government officials to secure lucrative contracts. Amara's heart raced. This was bigger than she had imagined. She quickly downloaded the files onto a flash drive, her hands trembling. If this information got out, it could destroy the company and Ethan's career. As she closed the file, a voice behind her made her jump. "Working late, Amara?" She spun around to see Ethan standing in the doorway, his arms crossed and a smirk on his face. Her stomach churned. How much had he seen? "Just finishing up some work," she said, forcing a smile. Ethan stepped into the room, his eyes narrowing as he glanced at her computer screen. "You know, it's not wise to poke around where you don't belong. Some things are better left unseen." Amara's pulse quickened. Was he threatening her? She stood, clutching the flash drive in her hand. "I was just reviewing some old files for my campaign. Nothing out of the ordinary." Ethan's smirk widened. "Good, because the last thing you'd want is to make enemies in this company. Trust me, Amara, you're not as indispensable as you think." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Amara standing there, her mind racing. She knew she had to be careful. Ethan was dangerous, and if he suspected she had the files, he would stop at nothing to silence her. That evening, Amara sat in her father's study, the flash drive resting on the desk between them. Marcus Johnson leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable as he listened to her recount the day's events. "This is serious, Dad," Amara said, her voice low. "If this gets out, it could ruin Blackwood Enterprises. But if I stay silent, Ethan will keep getting away with it." Marcus steepled his fingers, his dark eyes studying her. "You've always had a strong sense of justice, Amara. It's one of the things I admire most about you. But you need to be smart about this. Ethan Blackwood is a powerful man. He won't go down without a fight." "What should I do?" she asked, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "I can't just let him get away with this." Marcus leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "You're not alone in this, Amara. There are people who have been waiting for an opportunity to take Ethan down. People who have the resources and the influence to make it happen." Amara frowned. "What are you saying?" Marcus smiled faintly. "Let's just say I have a few connections. Leave the flash drive with me. I'll take care of the rest." Amara hesitated. She trusted her father, but she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than he was letting on. "Dad, who are these people? What aren't you telling me?" Marcus stood, walking over to the window. The city lights glittered in the distance. "There are things about my past that I've never shared with you, Amara. Things I've kept hidden to protect you. But the time has come for you to know the truth." He turned to face her, his expression serious. "I'm not just a retired businessman. I've spent years building a network of allies, people in high places who owe me favors, people who can make things happen. And now, I'm going to use that network to help you." Amara's eyes widened. "Dad, what are you talking about?" Marcus walked back to the desk, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Let's just say that Ethan Blackwood isn't the only one with power in this city, and when the time comes, he'll learn that the hard way." The next morning, Ethan arrived at his office to find an envelope on his desk. He frowned, picking it up and tearing it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a typed message. "The Gala will be your undoing." Ethan's jaw tightened. He crumpled the paper and tossed it into the trash, but the words lingered in his mind. Who would dare threaten him? And what did they know? He pressed the intercom on his desk. "Sarah, get me a list of everyone who had access to my office last night." "Right away, Mr. Blackwood," his assistant replied. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. He had enemies, of course. That came with the territory. But this felt different, more personal. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching him, waiting for the right moment to strike. Meanwhile, whispers of discontent were spreading through the company. Amara's colleagues had witnessed Ethan's treatment of her, and it had struck a nerve. In the break room, a group of employees huddled together, their voices low. "Did you see how he talked to Amara?" one of them said. "It was disgusting." "He's always been like that," another replied. But this time it felt different, like he crossed a line. "What if we did something about it?" a third voice chimed in. "What if we stood up to him?" The group fell silent, the weight of the idea settling over them. It was a risky move, but the seeds of rebellion had been planted, and once they took root, there would be no stopping them. Amara was sipping her morning coffee when the doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting anyone, so she approached the door cautiously. A small, unmarked package sat on her doorstep. She picked it up, her name scrawled across the front in bold, unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a USB drive and a note. "Use this wisely. The truth will set you free." Her heart pounded as she plugged the drive into her laptop. The files contained damning evidence, emails, financial records, and even video footage of Ethan's illegal activities. There were recordings of him discussing bribes, under-the-table deals, and threats made to whistleblowers. It was everything she needed to expose him. But who had sent it, and why? Amara's mind raced. She thought of her father's cryptic words about his network of allies. Was this his doing, or was someone else involved? Whoever it was, they had taken a huge risk to get this information to her. She couldn't waste it. Across town, Marcus Johnson sat in a dimly lit private club, a glass of whiskey in hand. Across from him was Victor Langston, a powerful media mogul with a reputation for taking down corrupt figures. The two men had known each other for decades, their alliance forged in the shadows of the corporate world. "You've been quiet for a long time, Marcus," Victor said, his voice low. "What's brought you out of retirement?" Marcus leaned forward, his expression serious. "My daughter. She's caught in the crossfire of Ethan Blackwood's greed. I won't let him destroy her." Victor raised an eyebrow. "Ethan Blackwood? He's a small fish in a big pond. Why not let him drown on his own?" "Because he's not just a small fish," Marcus replied. "He's a symptom of a larger problem, and if we take him down, we send a message to the rest of them." Victor nodded slowly. "And what do you need from me?" "I need you to amplify the truth," Marcus said. "When the time comes, I want Ethan's downfall to be front-page news. I want the world to see what happens when you cross the wrong people." Victor smiled, raising his glass. "Consider it done." Ethan stormed into his office, slamming the door behind him. He had just received word that confidential company files had been leaked. The IT department was scrambling to contain the damage, but it was too late. The files were already circulating among employees, sparking whispers of outrage and betrayal. "Who did this?" Ethan barked at his assistant, Sarah, who stood nervously by the door. "We don't know yet," she replied, "but the files were accessed from your account." Ethan's face turned red with fury. "That's impossible. I didn't leak anything." "Someone must have hacked your account," Sarah said. "We're working to trace the source, but it's going to take time." Ethan clenched his fists. This was no coincidence. Someone was targeting him, and he had a sinking feeling he knew who it was. The company Gala was just 2 days away, and tensions were running high. Amara had spent the past week preparing for the event, but her mind was elsewhere. She couldn't stop thinking about the files she had received and what they meant. She knew she had to act, but she also knew the risks. Meanwhile, Ethan was growing increasingly paranoid. He had doubled security at the Gala, determined to prevent any surprises. But deep down, he knew it wasn't enough. The walls were closing in, and he could feel it. The night before the Gala, Amara sat in her apartment staring at the USB drive. She had made copies of the files and sent them to a trusted journalist, just in case something happened to her. She knew she was playing with fire, but she had no other choice. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father. "Be ready. Tomorrow changes everything." Amara took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. She was ready. The grand entrance. The night of the gala arrived, and Blackwood Enterprises elite filled the grand ballroom of the most prestigious hotel in the city. Crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow over the sea of tuxedos and evening gowns. A live orchestra played softly in the background, setting the tone for an evening of power, wealth, and veiled intentions. Ethan Blackwood stood near the bar, whiskey in hand, scanning the crowd. He was on edge. The anonymous threat, the leaked files, and the whispers among his employees had rattled him more than he cared to admit. He had tightened security, but something still felt off. Then he saw her. Amara Johnson stepped through the grand entrance, her presence commanding attention. Dressed in an elegant black gown, she exuded confidence. She was no longer the employee he had dismissed in the boardroom. She was here for a reason, and Ethan could feel it in his bones. She made her way across the room, greeting influential guests with ease. It was clear she belonged. Ethan's grip tightened around his glass as he realized something unsettling. People weren't just treating her as an employee, they were treating her as an equal. Marcus Johnson followed closely behind, his towering presence unmistakable. The moment Ethan saw him, his blood ran cold. Marcus wasn't just any businessman. He was a kingmaker in the industry, a man with deep connections, power, and influence that rivaled even Ethan's. And he was here, with Amara. The realization hit Ethan like a freight train. He had gravely underestimated her. The trap is set. As the gala progressed, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Every conversation seemed to hush when he passed. Every glance in his direction felt loaded. His paranoia intensified when Victor Langston, the media mogul, approached him with a knowing smirk. "Ethan," Victor said, swirling his drink. "Hell of a night, isn't it?" Ethan forced a smile. "Always a pleasure, Victor." Victor chuckled. "Enjoy it while it lasts." Before Ethan could respond, Victor walked away, leaving him stewing in his growing unease. Across the room, Amara and Marcus watched as Ethan squirmed. "He knows something's coming," Amara whispered. Marcus nodded. "Good. Let him sweat. But when we strike, it has to be undeniable." The public exposure. As the night neared its peak, the time had come. The master of ceremonies took the stage, preparing to announce the honorees of the evening. Ethan Blackwood was expected to receive an award for his outstanding leadership. But before the announcement could begin, a different presentation appeared on the massive screen behind the stage. A hush fell over the room. On the screen, confidential documents from Project Phoenix flashed. Emails, financial statements, video recordings, everything exposing Ethan's corruption played for the entire elite audience to see. Gasps rippled through the crowd. People began whispering, eyes darting to Ethan, who stood frozen, his face pale. Security scrambled to cut the feed, but it was too late. The damage was done. Then Marcus took the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying authority, "tonight, we celebrate integrity and excellence, but we also stand against deception and corruption. What you've just seen is the truth about Blackwood Enterprises under its current leadership. It's time for change." The room erupted. Some guests distanced themselves from Ethan, others murmured about legal consequences. Reporters in attendance scrambled to capture every moment. Ethan turned to leave, but security guards blocked his path. "Mr. Blackwood, you need to come with us," one of them said. His downfall had been orchestrated perfectly. There was no escape. The aftermath in the days following the gala, Ethan Blackwood's name dominated headlines. His empire crumbled overnight. Stock prices plummeted, lawsuits piled up, and the board of directors ousted him from his own company. Meanwhile, Amar received a call from Victor Langston. "You did good, kid," he said. "What's next for you?" She looked out at the city skyline, a sense of triumph washing over her. "I have some ideas." Marcus smiled at her. "You've proven yourself, Amara. Now it's time to build something greater." And with that, a new era began, one where justice prevailed, and true leadership took its rightful place. The dust had settled, but the echoes of Ethan Blackwood's downfall still reverberated through the corporate world. Blackwood Enterprises, once seen as an untouchable empire, now stood on shaky ground. With its corrupt leader removed, the board was forced to restructure, and new leadership was inevitable. Amara Johnson, once belittled and underestimated, now found herself in a position of power, not because she sought revenge, but because she had fought for justice and integrity. Offers from top firms poured in, and she had the freedom to choose her next move. Sitting in her father's office, she looked across at Marcus Johnson, who watched her with pride. "So, what's next?" he asked. Amara smiled. "Something bigger. I don't just want to expose corruption. I want to change the system from within. It's time to build something that stands for real leadership." Marcus nodded. "Then, let's get to work." As Amara stepped out onto the city streets, the weight of the past lifted from her shoulders. She had fought for her place, earned her respect, and paved the way for others who had been overlooked and dismissed. Ethan Blackwood was a lesson, a reminder that power without integrity always crumbles. Justice prevails when we stand up against corruption, arrogance, and inequality. Amara's story is proof that no matter how much power someone holds, truth and integrity will always win in the end. What do you think of Amara's journey? Have you ever faced a similar challenge where you had to fight for your place? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you loved this story, don't forget to like, share, and follow for more powerful narratives that inspire change. Never let anyone tell you that you don't belong. Let your work, your voice, and your truth speak for you.